I believe Chris Ballard is calling us now. God, these skies, Jake. Is that lightning or is that the phone line lighting up?
That was lightning.
So, yeah, some thunderstorms in the Indianapolis area. Again, no Colts practice today, and fresh out of a meeting at Grand Park right now. Head into his 6 years general manager of the Indianapolis Colts. Chris Ballard is on the Payless Liquors hotline. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. How are y'all?
So was that meeting about adding a veteran wideout?
We're not 5 seconds into the interview. We're talking about wideouts. Kevin, we would have 53 of them if it was up to you.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. If you had 53 Michael Pittmans, it'd be a pretty good football team. I was saying that last week.
You're right.
Pittman could go play linebacker for you.
That's good.
Chris, let's begin with this. As you get set and you are watching over, I was asking Kevin this, and I want your thought on this. As a general manager of an NFL team, when you are watching practice in training camp, aside from the quarterback position, we're going to take that one off the table for you as an answer. What position or unit is the most difficult to tell and how it translates between how guys look in a practice situation and how they look in Sunday games? For you personally, what has been the hardest position to evaluate?
Well, all right. So when you don't have pads on, so we haven't had any, we haven't had pads on since last season. It's always the O-line, D-line with no pads on. I mean, this game's played in pads, and the more padded practices we get to see guys, they start to really differentiate themselves between each other with the pads on. So with no pads, the O-line, D-line. When we get the pads on, I'll still say this, that, and you've taken quarterback out of the equation, running back and wide out, because there's no threat of getting hit during practice, really. So until we get in game situations, those two positions, they're pretty much unscathed and untouched until we get into a real live game situation. And what happens, like wideout, and it's been interesting to see how young kids have been able to come into our league and play faster. In the past, that wasn't always the case, and there's always an exception where 2 or 3 guys will have just monster years as young players, but the adjustments of coverage, the physicality of the coverage, all that's an adjustment for a wideout, and it ramps up even more on game day. So those are the positions I think are the hardest until we really get in game situations.
He's the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts. Chris Ballard is with us here on Kevin and Query. Chris, last week I asked you about position battles that you were keeping an eye on in camp. You mentioned left tackle and safety, 2 of those starting battles. Your early thoughts on those two, knowing full well that full pads have not been put on yet, in particular at left tackle?
Yeah, until we get the pads on the O-line, I'll refrain from. But safety's been, you could see things because we're, the movement. And so Blackman's come back really strong. We'll continue to monitor some of his reps, but he looks really good. Nick Cross, we think very highly of Nick. We got to see him in live situations, but so far so good. Rodney McLeod's been a great addition. All right, and then behind him, we've got a bunch of guys that are all pretty good football players, with Watts and Redmond, who have played a lot of football, and then some rookies in Thomas and Dembo. So the battle out for that fourth, and, who the starters first, who are the first 2, and then who is 4 and 5 and 6 is going to really play itself out as we move forward here.
Chris, we were just talking about the fact, Chris Ballard's our guest on the Payless Liquors guest line. Kevin and I were just talking about the fact, so I'm taking a college class right now, right? And I have this one assignment that everything's gone well, and for whatever reason, this one assignment's like this mental hurdle to me. Like I just can't get my head around it. What is your assignment with this team that is your mental hurdle that is keeping you awake, that you just is the one area you just don't feel like you have a grasp on yet?
I don't know. It's always, we're obsessed with depth and making sure we have enough depth. And I don't ever feel good. I mean, I just don't. I mean, that's why you'll see so many transactions, during the season even. And it's not just finding 53 players, it's finding another 16 on the practice squad that when injuries do happen, you can go to one of those guys. So that keeps me up at night, making sure we have enough depth. And when it really starts to, rear its ugly head, you want to have a hold the fort player. Look, you're never going to replace an all-pro player at that point when something happens, but you want to be able to have a hold the fort player that you can win with. And that's something that keeps me up.
Chris, I do have to ask, just full well, I got to ask another wideout question. Last week, you mentioned you guys were still having some discussions on potentially adding a veteran. A week later, are you having more discussions, less discussions? Where does that stand?
I think we'll get through this week, and then we'll assess where we're at. We like what we've seen so far, but, it's still so early. We got to let this thing play out a little bit. And the veteran players, we would add, they've been playing a long time and they know how to play the game. And so I don't see it as much as a transition. And sometimes you got to look for maybe the help that you're really going to need week 5, 6, 7, and 8. It's a long season. So I don't ever always look at it this way. So the first 4 weeks of the season, we're trying to, you're trying to go out and win every game you can, but you're also trying to figure out, okay, who are we? Who are we as a team? And what do we do really good? And then where are the areas that we have some deficiencies at? And once you figure that out, that's how you're going to play. Getting into October, in September, you can start plugging some of those holes that you have, if you have any. And then in October, really refining it and playing to the strengths of your team. So when you get into November, December, and January, you're playing good. You're playing good football and you're playing to your strengths.
Back in February, you mentioned, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, we can't act like, Paris is our number 2 or number 3 on the depth chart. I think you would probably agree right now Paris would be that, given the nature of your depth chart. What happened this offseason to where, as you guys unfolded, that it ended up being Paris is still your number 2 or number 3 entering the season?
Well, I don't know if we can say that yet. Paris has had a good start, but so is Pierce and so is Doolin. Patman's done some good things. When Strawn got hurt late in camp and not being able to get these reps, that adjusted some things. But we still got a long way to go here. Paris has had a great start, and I'm proud of him and happy for him, because he's worked so hard. He's a very talented young man. But I think we got to let this thing play out. One of the guys that, Doolin, we just kind of gloss over Doolin sometimes. And, all he does is every time he gets an opportunity, he produces. So it'll be interesting to see these guys battle it out here over the next month.
Do you believe T.Y. Hilton will play a game still in his career for the Indianapolis Colts?
That's a loaded question.
It's a direct one.
We'll see. I think everybody knows my feelings for T.Y., and I do think he can still be a contributor in this league, and we'll work through that one.
The one thing, Chris, that I have not heard, and that is we have all, fans and media alike, speculated that from the standpoint of Chris Ballard, but I have yet to really hear anybody try to figure out the standpoint of T.Y. Hilton. Do you believe that if you were interested in T.Y. Hilton coming back, that he would immediately jump at that? Or is that a conversation that would have to take place?
No, that's a conversation that has to take place. And I have great respect for him and care for T.Y. And he's just a true professional. And then to watch his growth, from 17 to, the last year was just really fun to watch. He's a leader. But that's a discussion that would have to happen.
Has it in any way, from an exploratory standpoint, started to take place?
See, that's another loaded question. So you just keep leading me down this road here. I think I answered a while ago. We're going to let it play out a week, and then we'll start making some decisions.
When it comes to Ashton Dulin, the thing about him to me that's intriguing, I agree with you. I mean, like each time, he's one of those guys that just kind of doesn't go away, right? I mean, you say to yourself, you're like, man, this guy might have a place here. So have you seen something in him, Chris? In other words, when Ashton Dulin first was getting reps, did you foresee that there was more out of him and therefore you were patient with him? Or has he pleasantly surprised you to the point where you're like, you know what, this exceeds what I thought from him, so let's ride this out and see what we have in him? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Look, we saw explosiveness on tape when he was coming out of college, even at Malone, where he played. And early in camp, it was a big jump in competition for him, but the flashes were really strong early. I'll never forget, like when we released him the first year and put him on the practice squad. I mean, I was holding my breath and nobody else saw the explosiveness that we saw on tape and claimed him, And then when we moved him up, he was an automatic contributor on special teams, which is always a bright sign for a young player when they can hold up on teams. And then, he's just kind of grown into his role. We knew he's very talented. Sometimes it just takes time.
He's Chris Ballard, general manager of the Indianapolis Colts, and he's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Chris, I know you had talked about moving the start times a little bit closer to kind of 1 o'clock kickoffs to try and replicate a little bit of body clocks once the season gets here. Anything else, week one specific, start to a season specific that you guys have changed here in camp? Will you play your starters more in the preseason because of the slow starts? Anything along those lines?
Yeah, now Frank and I have had those discussions, and as we go along here, depending on the work we get and work we think we still need to get, we'll assess that as we go along. And it is because it's interesting because we've had so many struggles in that week one game, and then even early in the season, so racking our brains trying to make sure we get a fast start, which is really important, just based on our schedule this year. So we're working at it. We're working at making sure that, there's a balance between getting enough work and then being, not overworking them to where, they're dead. And, that's something we're trying to figure out, as we go along here. And then we'll make an assessment and play the guys. But guys will get play time in the preseason. How much, I don't know yet. We'll work through that.
I know the AFC South drought spans before you arrived here, but with that drought and just how last season ended, do you feel that you and or Frank, I guess, are on any sort of hot seat entering this season?
I never worry about that, Kev. I mean, we just if you start worrying about that, you can't do your job, So we think we've had some really good football teams. We've done some good things here under some pretty tough circumstances, and that's why I give Frank a lot of credit. He's had a different quarterback every year, and we've stayed relevant. Have we won at the rate we think we should have won at? No. But we were a good football team last year. I think by the mood we were all in at the end of the year. You're 9-6, and you've already beaten a few playoff teams along the way in Buffalo and New England and Arizona, and then you melt down at the end. I mean, they all count. So finishing and playing more consistently through the season is important. But I promise you, there's no more pressure that we put on ourselves. We don't feel mine's more of a lack. My pressure comes, I feel like I'm letting the city and the organization down when we don't get the job done. It's never one that I worry about my job. I mean, I've got a degree, Kevin. I can get another. I mean, I can go do something else.
Hey.
I mean, I love what I do, but, I can go get another one.
Do you know how to do...
I can do something.
I was going to say, Jake needs help with his school.
Do you know how to do slide presentations on a Google Doc, Chris? Because that's a challenge. That is my NFL depth.
Absolutely. And I could charge you $15 an hour for that.
Hell yeah. Listen, I'll send my stuff over. Trust me. Hey, I had a tight end question, but first I wanted to ask you this, Chris Ballard. Deshaun Watson, 6-game suspension. Your reaction?
None. I mean, he's not on our team, and I'm not in the league office, so really none.
Do you guys, when other players have disciplinary issues, do you ever use that as discussion within your roster and your players?
We talk a lot. I mean, and David Thornton does a tremendous job for us, and we spend a lot of time educating our players on, how we act and, the expectation and the standard of who we are organizationally. Doesn't mean they're not going to make mistakes. That's going to happen. These are young men, but we do our best to educate them and be proactive with everything we do.
Chris, Frank has spoken pretty highly of the tempo that Matt Ryan has wanted to practice at, and I guess you guys have practiced at here through the first couple of days. To kind of the average fan, where do you think they will see the strengths of Matt Ryan this season?
Well, it doesn't take long because he's got a good presence about him and confidence, which I think all good quarterbacks have. There's just an innate confidence that no matter what's going on, we're going to find a way to get it done. And the decision making and how fast his mind works to get the ball where it needs to go is one thing I think they'll notice. And that's the one thing about the offense. And that's always been Frank's offense. Get the ball out of your hands, get the ball in the hands of, your playmakers. And that's where the 1-2 receiver, they're going to spread the ball around. That's that Matt made the comment to me. He goes, it's nice because, in this offense, we're going to have a multitude of players that catch balls because I'm going to throw it to who's open and the defense dictates me to throw the football. So I think that's things you're going to see. And then from a leadership standpoint, just who he is and what he stands for. And it's been fun to be around.
One of the guys, Chris Ballard is our guest. One of the guys that was so popular here for a number of reasons, I don't have to list them for you, you are aware, was Jack Doyle at the tight end position. But I think from a football standpoint, he was such a totality at tight end because he could get you key catches when you needed it. He was not afraid to surrender his body and block. He was like the definition of like a Fisher-Price piece of a tight end, right?
Yes.
What tight end in your tight end room right now most closely resembles the totality of what you would want from a tight end? Not what you hope they grow into, but where they are right now on August 1st.
Well, look, let's start with Jack because you nailed it. I mean, I told Frank 2 years ago, I said, look, when Jack finishes, he is going to be a hard guy to replace because he does everything right. And I don't know if he was underappreciated through the league, but he wasn't underappreciated in our building for what he did. I still think he was the best blocking tight end in the league, and that's hard to find. It is really hard to find. And then to say we're going to replace everything he did with one player, I don't know if that's going to happen. I would tell you right now, Mo is probably the closest. But the skill sets of Mo, Woods, Granson, and Ogletree, those four, plus we have another young kid by the name of Michael Jacobson on the back.
Yeah, Iowa State.
A year ago. Between those guys, we think we're going to have a really strong group as they grow and develop together. But Mo would be the one right now that could do all of it.
Chris Ballard is our guest. Chris, I want to go back real quick to, and I hate to belabor the point here, but I think the thought process from a lot of people is that, to use Kevin's phrase, the veteran wideout, and just the importance of having a guy like that in the room for young players. Is that offset by having Reggie Wayne as a coach? Does that alleviate the need for a guy between the lines that is a veteran?
I think it helps. There's no question it helps. Reggie's really smart. knows how to play the game and played it at such a high level, so he's able to give these guys, some things that he might not, they might not get on their own, just because of his experience. And then, like, Pittman's a third-year player. He's not a 7-8-year grizzled veteran, but Pitt's played a lot of games and it's got a lot of experience, so that's good. But Reg helps offset a little bit of that.
Chris, any Shaquille Leonard update? You expect him to practice at Grand Park at all?
I don't know yet. We won't rush it. I mean, when he's ready, he's ready. He's doing good. He's in a good spot mentally, and he's working his tail off to get back. So when he's back, he'll be back.
And then I probably know the answer on this, but I'll ask anyways. Do you expect a Quentin Nelson contract extension before Week 1?
We'll see. We'll work through it. I know we like him, and we'd like to keep him here. So we'll work through it.
Is left tackle a competition right now, or is that pretty much Pryor's job to lose, and then Ryman will get some opportunity, to use your word, at depth?
Yeah, it's a competition. It's an open competition, and Ryman will get his fair assessment, amount of reps so we can assess where he's at. He's a really talented player, but so is Matt. I mean, Matt, when he played for us last year, man, he played good, and every time he played, he's such a big body. For being such a big body, he's a good athlete. He's got really good punch and strength. He's had a great start to camp. He's got himself in really good shape. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And at the end of the day, we'll try to get the best 5, on the field, with 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 being important pieces for the season.
On a positive wideout note, I thought Alec Pierce breaking press coverage or beating press coverage looked pretty easy to him Saturday night.
Yeah, he's getting better. He's got a ways to go, but he's getting better. And he's got to get used to the physicality, of how, and the aggressiveness that they play you at this level, and that every ball is usually contested. You don't usually get many layups.
Chris, if you had your choice between an unlimited supply of healthy players at a position and you had to pick one, would you rather it be offensive line or defensive backs?
D-line, they're hard, they're hard to find. They're hard to find, especially when you get into the season. We've had some success doing, when we claimed Muhammad, which ended up being a really good claim for us one year. But it's hard to find bigs that can run and move, during the season.
That was like the most Freudian answer, because I offered you O-line and corner and you went with D-line, so that says a lot right there. I mean, right? Hey,
I'll tell you, well, really, if you'd have gave me the quarterback position, that would have been listed 1.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Full pads tomorrow, Chris?
Full pads. We're cranking it up.
Chris, a lot of people, in conclusion, ask this. This is like the most common question when you do the most common question for you, probably, especially if Kevin's asking you, is about wide receiver, right?
Mm-hmm,
the most common question that we get is, what is the bar of a successful season for the Colts? Now, for you, Chris Ballard, I understand and respect that winning the Super Bowl is the goal every year. I get that. That being said, if you were to draw the line in the sand as to what you, Chris Ballard, the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts, consider no less than to be a success for this season, it would be to accomplish what?
To have a great practice tomorrow in our first full padded practice.
Which would lead you to a record that you would aspire to be what?
I mean, you even look. The good thing about that loaded one, like, you built it up. It was pretty awesome. Like, that was pretty awesome that you loaded it up. But we got to get better. You got to improve your team. And if I'm trying to gauge how many wins we're going to have right now, then we're losing sight of what really works in this league. And that's you better get ready for today and be the best. We better have the best walkthrough we can.
Getting
today.
better from a year ago would mean making the playoffs. Is that sufficient, or do you need to win a playoff game?
We are just worried about today, man. That's it. That's all I'm worried about.
Year 6 for Chris Ballard as general manager. The Colts get back to practice tomorrow morning. The full pads will be on for the first time here in the 2022 training camp. Chris, appreciate the time this morning, and we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, guys. Thank y'all.
Chris Ballard right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. We'll recap that, sneak in a pop quiz to close things out.